If you're one of the 2 or 3 or 4 hardy souls who have watched all 31 episodes and now you're watching the 32nd of 32 NFL team previews here on bet.nola.com, powered by the Datitude podcast, I want to know about it. At jderry at theadvocate.com. You deserve an attaboy for sure. I am Jim Derry, and this is the New Orleans Saints. We have made it all the way through, and we are previewing the local team here. And what do we think about the Saints? Well, there are so many people. Here's what worries me, and I'm not going to give any spoiler alerts, but anyone who's watched me at all throughout the past 3 or 4 months knows what I think about the Saints. My ending prediction is not going to be a surprise to anyone. What scares the hell out of me, and I've said this before again, is that every local pundit, and when I say every local pundit, I mean every single local pundit loves the New Orleans Saints and especially loves the over. Now at 8.5 wins. Just a couple months ago, it was at 7.5. It creeped up to 8. You still had to pay big juice, and now you're even having to pay juice to get 8.5. Some places it's 9. The Saints. But how did they not? They went 9-8 last year with a fractured roster. The only difference is, and it's a big difference, Sean Payton, no longer the coach of the Saints, as we all know, Dennis Allen, now the coach of the Saints. So what is going to be the biggest difference beside the fact that you have the intangibles of having Sean Payton on the sideline? Well, Pete Carmichael takes over this offense. But he's kind of had his hand, obviously, all over this offense with Sean Payton throughout the past 16 years. Why is it going to change all that much now? Well, you know what's going to change? They have a lot more weapons than they had for most of last year. Because Jameis Winston, well, we can't say he's 100% healthy, but he sure appears to be ready to go for the regular season. And one big difference, a huge difference this year, is that if Jameis Winston, something were to happen to him, he's got Andy Dalton as a big backup. I mean, the improvement and the uptick at backup quarterback from Andy Dalton over Trevor Siemian, and I know some of you are going to hate me for saying this, but Taysom Hill. Both Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton are head and shoulders above where Taysom Hill is as a quarterback. Dave DeCorbier, D squared, is not going to like this preview if he's watching for me saying that. But it's not just that. It's this wide receiving core. Remember last year, Marquez Callaway was really your number 1 threat at wide receiver. Now he's your number 4. Michael Thomas is back. Is he going to be a wide receiver 1? I don't know. I mean, but even if he's not, Jarvis Landry and Chris Olave, the rookie from Ohio State, plenty good enough to pick up the slack. Jarvis Landry, to me, is one of the keys on this offense, and not just because of his abilities, and not just because Jameis Winston has shown through training camp and that brief little time in the first preseason game that he could end up being the number 1 target, but it's for his leadership abilities and the fact that he could become one of the big captains on this offense and help lead these other youngsters. Jarvis Landry is a key factor. And Chris Olave, what are we going to get out of him in that first season? Well, the Saints seem to get a lot out of first-year receivers. I mean, you think about Michael Thomas, you think about Marcus Colston throughout the Sean Payton era, and to me, we're still in the Sean Payton era a little bit, right? I know, look, nothing against Dennis Allen. I've loved what he's done so far. I think he's ready to take the next step, but this team is kind of like the one that Les Miles had when Nick Saban left. It's still got Sean Payton's stamp on it, and Pete Carmichael helps that. That's not a bad thing at all. And Dennis Allen will grow into his own coach, and that'll be fine. But there are plenty of weapons on this offense, and certainly enough to go past that 8.5 number. The defense is solid as almost any in the NFL. Last year, they were 7th in the NFL in defense, and they were on the field a whole bunch. But they found ways to get things done. They banged up Tampa Bay again. And is there any better linebacker in the NFL than Demario Davis? I mean, we're biased, so it's hard to ask that question. And he's getting to that age where maybe he starts to downturn. He's got to stay healthy. And I just don't see how you don't think this defense is ready. You talk at the back end of this defense. The back end of this defense is, to me, could be one of the best secondaries in the NFL if everybody stays healthy. And those are the things you have to worry about. And then lastly, I saved him for last because to me, he's the heart and soul, not maybe of just the defense, but the heart and soul of the team is Cameron Jordan. And the guy's been in the league for 28 years now? I mean, it seems like it. And he just keeps performing and he just keeps doing his thing. I've been called Derry Downer a lot. Before I get to the schedule, we're going to put the numbers back on the board one last time. And I tell you when I think the Saints are not going to be good. I tell you when I have problems with lines or numbers, or if I think they're going to lose a game, or if I think they're going into the season and they don't have a lot of hope. But you look at this number of 8.5. I wish you would have got it at 7.5 if you didn't bet it already. But there's still value. And to me, even more value on the division. The division total, to me, might have the best value of it all at plus 320. Maybe that's the way you want to go. But I jump right into the schedule, and here's the part that does scare me. It opens up okay at Atlanta, then you get Tampa Bay. Can they beat Tampa Bay for a fifth straight time? Well, actually, it'd be a sixth straight time in the regular season. Can they do that and then go to Carolina and win? Can they be 3-0 against division foes? That'd be like winning a triple header in baseball, which obviously they don't play triple headers, never have, but okay, winning a doubleheader is hard enough. Can you sweep the gauntlet? Can you sweep your NFC South opponents in the first 3 games and send a message? You know, really, I guarantee you coaches don't like playing 3 division games to get started. But if you're going to do it, this might be the year to do it, to send that message out. Because if they do start 3-0, obviously they take over Tampa Bay and being the favorites. Because Tampa Bay has got a ridiculously tough schedule to get started. They go play Minnesota, the Vikings in London. And I say this with my expert in just a moment. I think this is a bellwether game because the Vikings and the Saints might be the best value in the NFC. The Vikings are much improved. They are a 10 or 11 win team, I think. And I think they win the NFC North if you miss those previews. And then Seattle, Cincinnati, I don't think is as good as they were last year, although it's tough to stop Burrow and Chase. They are coming into the Superdome. The Cardinals, the Raiders, the Ravens, the Steelers. You have got to start, to me, this has got to be a 7-3 start. If you're going to win this division, now if you're going to go over 8.5, it could be 6-4. But you have got to start 7-3 or better to win this division. And I think they can do that. I really do. Because then it gets a lot tougher. Rams, 49ers, Buccaneers. That is a horrendous stretch. That is and that's before the bye week. Saints have the worst bye week in the league. To me, 14 is the worst bye week in the league. I'd rather have 6 than 14, and I don't like 6 either. But to have this bye week in December is brutal. You're talking about 2 weeks before Christmas is when your bye week. And then you have 4 games. You finish up with 4 games you can win, but you don't want to have to win them. Again, that's why you need to be 7-3 by that week 10. And I think the Saints will be. That's my final analysis. I think there's value all over the board on this team. Wins, division title. I think you're getting value on conference. I think you're getting value in Super Bowl. Now, again, I bet all these things 2 months ago when the numbers were much better, but I still think of these numbers on this board today. I still think they're worth playing. And we're going to talk a lot about more. If you're watching this show, you haven't caught our live Datitude that is on Friday, September 2nd, same day as this. You may see this early or you may see this after that we've already recorded live. You could still find it. Datitude, wherever you find your podcast, you can go on our NOLA.com Facebook page and see it with Jeff Duncan and I, our first live show, which is also available on demand. We talk a lot more about the Saints preview, and we continue on our final little jaunt with our expert, and he has been great. Well, we have made it, boys and girls. Day 32 of 32, and it's the one that most people here around where I'm broadcasting are most interested in, and that is the New Orleans Saints. And they have had quite an offseason. It's been an interesting change from Sean Payton now to Dennis Allen. Jameis Winston looks healthy. They've got supposedly most of their receiving core back. They draft Chris Olave. Of course, their other number 1 draft pick is now injured, but we'll talk about him in a minute. Adam Chernoff of Covers.com, as he has been for all 31 previous episodes, going to tell me whether he agrees with me or whether he doesn't agree with me or whether he's somewhere in the middle. But I have a hunch. I have a hunch we're going to agree, but at
I know
least
where you're going. Yep.
I think we're both going to have an opinion at least on this one. So let's start it with this. The Saints over-under at 8.5 currently, and you got to pay juice to get it. It has been steadily increasing. Adam, I will say this. I've been called Derry Downer many times throughout my career, so I will tell you when I think the Saints stink, but I don't understand with this lineup, this core, this group, and I get the change from Sean Payton to Dennis Allen, but to me, I don't understand why this number is so low. I will say that's not nearly the value there was a month and a half ago when it was 7.5, when I jumped all over it. But still, I think there's a little bit of a bargain at 8.5, and even more bargain at division title at plus 320.
Okay, so we did a podcast here in early April for the draft.
Yes.
And we talked about win totals, and the one that I left everyone with was Saints over 7.5. Now, I know everybody probably is still waiting to bet any win totals. So, like you mentioned, you're looking at 8.5. It is a much bigger number. There's probably still value to go over. And another way that I could say to bet this would be to look at all your sportsbook offerings. And if you have a yes, no to win the division price, you can bet the no on Tampa Bay around plus 275. And that'll give you the option for an upstart Panthers team as well as the Saints. If you think Carolina has something there, we talked about it. We said we don't really know. It's a tricky one, but it kind of gives you that extra option for a very similar price to what you would be paying Saints division. It's an interesting output. Jim, we can go a lot of different directions here. I'll say that if this team was still coached by Sean Payton, this would probably be as much as I've liked the preseason future in a long time to go over, or for the Saints to have success, division, make the playoffs, however you want to approach it. With Dennis Allen stepping in, it kind of gives me hesitation because, like we talked about with Tampa Bay, Dennis Allen as a defensive coordinator is amazing. Put him in that role. He should be one of the top defensive coordinators considered for any team if we were starting the league fresh. He is brilliant. What is he going to look like as a head coach with added responsibility? We don't know. That's really the big concern here for the Saints. The reason that I'm willing to bet on the Saints is the only team with that defensive head coach is because we know very certainly that a lot of the offense is going to be pushed aside and it's going to be left to Pete Carmichael because he has been there for almost 2 decades. And there's been instances where Peyton has been away from the team, where Carmichael has stepped in and run the offense to perfection. Some of the best stretches in Drew Brees' career were with Carmichael taking the place of Sean Payton, the suspension, the leg injury, whatever it might be. There's proven success that Carmichael can have with this team. Where I think it's really interesting is last year, it's tough to get a lot from what the Saints did. They played 4 different quarterbacks. They lost the second most games to injury on offense. This team was beat up, banged up, and they still put up really good numbers. The price point this year is actually lower than where they finished a year ago. I really like Winston in this offense, especially with Michael Thomas coming back, but the speed that Olave has. The one thing that's going to make the Saints team really different from what they were a year ago is, as much as you might dislike Jameis Winston, one thing that he does and is willing to do is throw the ball downfield with reckless abandon. That sounds like a bad thing, but for the Saints, with Kamara out of the backfield in this offensive line, space and defenses needing to respect things downfield is what this team desperately needs, and something they have not had, even going back into the last couple of years of Brees' career when his arm strength was dwindling. Now that that's there, this really gives this team a lot of options to run the offense how they want to. And I think you add Jarvis Landry in, and this trio of guys is the best set of weapons the Saints have had at wide receiver for a very long time. We're talking 5-10 seasons. Like, this is as good as they've had. So I'm really intrigued how that looks with the deep ball and what that does for the guys out of the backfield behind this O-line. This is a really good football team that is somewhat flying under the radar. But like you mentioned, professionals love this team. I really like it a lot too.
And Marquez Callaway as a number 4. Traquan
Great.
Smith is a 4/5. I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy to go from the complete lack of depth at wide receiver last year to more depth, and they're going to have to make some tough cuts today. As we record this today or tomorrow, and they're going to make some tough cuts, and it will be interesting to see. I want to get your opinion on, when you look at the offense, there are definitely some potential problems that I wonder how handicappers take a look at. It's looking more and more like Alvin Kamara will not be suspended this season, that it will happen in the offseason. But it's still a possibility that it could happen. You got Michael Thomas. He's coming off the foot injury, and now he's having issues with his hamstring. You look at left tackle, number 1 pick, Trevor Penning was fighting with James Hurst, who's also banged up, and we don't know who's going to play left tackle in week 1. Do these things enter your mind? And I know probably more in a look ahead line type thing they might, but as far as a future number and trying to get value in a division title, do those things enter your mind / bother you?
Okay, so from a handicapping perspective, obviously, if Thomas is not on the field and Kamara gets suspended, that's going to change things pretty drastically for the Saints. The left tackle situation is a weird one. Again, like you said, we still don't know, but that's negated somewhat by Pete McCoy, Ruiz, and Ramczyk being just one of the best O-lines there is. So that's negated a bit. But obviously, at the skill position players, those are always worth more. If Thomas and Kamara are not on the field, that's going to make this team close to, I would say, a win worse is a fair number to think about it long-term, week to week. That's probably 2 points total combined in the point spread. What I will say from just Saints fans watching this and how you kind of want to think about this, Michael Thomas is no longer a number 1 receiver. So if you have that expectation going into 2022 in your mind for how dominant he was 2018-19, just taper that off because he's not that guy anymore. The ankle injury and what that does to the interior of the leg and what that does for route running, he'll never be the same guy. So take a step back on that. And what I would really be hoping for is, like you mentioned, you get some more emergence from, depending how they cut it, Callaway or Smith as that extra guy, but you really need to hope that Olave becomes this dominant downfield speed receiver, because what that will do is demand extra coverage from defenses. And when you think about Michael Thomas, now that his route running is negated, if you have some extra emphasis needed elsewhere, that's going to take the burden off, and it's still going to allow him and his elite hands to be able to really make an impact within this offense. And so you really need to be watching for that. Landry is going to be fine no matter where he's put. He's going to be really good at playing off of both of these guys. And so he's going to be that dominant number 2, but you really need Olave to step in. But just have the expectations for Thomas tapered off and just really watch for early on how this team is able to stretch the field, because that's going to be the big tell for this offense.
You see one big difference between the Falcons and the Saints. I mean, and their numbers only 3.5 wins different. Drake London, who they drafted in the first round, is clearly their number 1 receiver. Now, Kyle Pitts is probably the number 1 target, but their number 1 receiver is Drake London. Here, Chris Olave is wide receiver number 3 for this offense, and they already have in my mind, a top 3 or 4 defense. But before I ask you about the defense real quick, last year you talk about the 4 different quarterbacks for the Saints, and obviously that's a lot about what Saints fans, and they don't want to see Ian Book on the field. How much does it help you with the fact this year that with Jameis Winston as the starter, even though you worry about him whether he's going to stay healthy or not, to get Andy Dalton in there, to me, a top 5 backup quarterback, how much that could help this team?
It's definitely relief, but you said it right. You want Jameis on the field. You want him healthy, because the most valuable thing that you can have in 2022 in the NFL is a QB that can push the ball downfield. And trust me, as Saints fans watching this, variance is going to follow Jameis Winston anywhere that he goes. You're going to be frustrated with a lot of decisions that he makes, but you have to understand that he is very, very, very different from what you've been accustomed to with the precision passing of Drew Brees for 2 decades. Last year, you didn't get to see it in full. You are going to get some huge plays and you are going to get some huge mistakes, but that is what you want in 2022 when you're not dealing with some of the top 5 or 6 elite quarterbacks. So you want Jameis healthy, you want him on the field, and you want that deep ball to work, because that is where this Saints offense can exceed the ceiling that's being put on it.
Handicappers love uncertainty with massive
Absolutely.
potential. I wasn't betting back in the day, but I would imagine handicappers loved Brett Favre. I mean,
It's yeah, and again, it was his end of the career in the late 2000s was right when I got started, but you're exactly right. When there's more uncertainty, there's more chance of the odds being mispriced. And that's exactly what you're looking for. And that's what makes a lot of the NFL so difficult to bet, is there's a lot of things that are known and the expectations fall within a narrow window. Jameis Winston could be a 5,000-yard passer with 45 touchdowns and be incredible, or he could be benched by week 8 and you get Andy Dalton because Winston's thrown 15 interceptions. But that is what makes the team so exciting to bet on, because that upside with Jameis is enormous. But with that comes a massive floor. But we're dealing with the team that's priced at 8.5 that could legitimately win 11 games, could also win 5 games if it goes wrong. So that's what makes it so exciting as a bettor when you're looking at the Saints.
I bet $20 on Jameis to be the league MVP at 150 to 1. Good deal.
I think so. And I would honestly also bet on him to lead the league in interceptions if you're going to go that far.
That's
That
true.
doesn't mean the Saints are going to be a terrible football team, but if Carmichael lets him throw, we saw him throw 33 touchdowns and 33 INTs and lead the league in passing for the Bucs. And I think the difference is the Saints are going to be leading a lot more than that Bucs team was.
Right.
But I mean, it's not a stretch to think that Jameis is going to get near 20 INTs, but he might have a whole lot more touchdowns too, because that's just what he brings to this team overall. So it's nothing wrong with taking the MVP shot, but I don't think there's anything wrong going the other way, because this is going to be an offense with just an enormous amount of variance with him under center.
Lastly, I thank you for doing the extended preview here with our team, our local team, and the Saints. And defensive rank last year of 7. And I honestly think, Adam, with this, if this D line stays healthy and the defensive backfield stays healthy and Demario Davis stays healthy, all ifs, of course, but I think 7's the floor for this defense. I mean, and I think there's going to be a chance to, even though as good as the Saints offense looks on paper, I think you have plenty of chances. I think their overs may be inflated a little bit, and you might be able to get some good prices on some unders throughout the season.
7 is the floor is ambitious. I'm not super far off from that. I think it'll rank very close to the same. I would say that that's kind of, if you can have a defense that ranks 7th again, despite the schedule being pretty tough, that will give this offense all the opportunity that it needs to get into the playoffs. And so if you're exceeding 7th with this defense and everyone on the offense for the most part is able to stay healthy, that's going to put the Saints in a very good situation. We'll see if Lattimore can tighten up within the red zone. That would go a very long way against top wide receivers. But as you mentioned up front, this is a very good defense that's going to need some new pieces in the secondary to contribute. If they finish 7th, we'll be looking in January of this being a playoff team for sure.
And the fact that they've had Tampa Bay's number division title at plus 320, we kind of touched on it, but I assume you like that value. It was 500. It was better when it was 500, but 320 still a value.
Honestly, Jim, at this point, if you can find the no on the Bucs to win, you're not looking at a massive difference in price at plus 275 versus plus 325 for the Saints only. If you think the Bucs are going to struggle and everything we talked about in the preview yesterday is going to come to fruition, there's no, I think plus 275 is the better bet than plus 325.
Makes sense.
Because there's so much uncertainty about the Panthers that take that while you can.
Best international game of the year is going to be Saints and Vikings in London. You talked about it a few weeks ago. I think the Vikings and the Saints are both the best values in the NFC, and I think we kind of agree on that. Right?
They're my two best bets for teams within the NFC. Yes,
Mine too, and I think we're really looking forward to that. I think that game in Week 5, I believe, is going to tell us a whole lot. And I want to thank you, Adam Chernoff, for coming with us throughout the whole ride. It has been a lot of fun, and we made it through all 32. We are going to talk to you soon during the football future. I'm sure when we get to Datitude, doing it live every Friday, we're going to have you on at some point in the football future. We wish you nothing but success going forward. I'm going to miss talking to you every week.
hey, we'll still have to keep in touch, obviously, during the season, but thanks for all the previews, and this is going to be a very fun season.
Adam Chernoff, covers.com. Make sure you check him out and check out covers.com. Lots going on there. And thank you for joining us throughout this ride of 32 teams, team preview. It's time to get to real football, boys and girls. Sure is.